Hi class, welcome to our discussion of Jean Piaget and his theory of cognitive development. This is a wonderful quote from him. When you teach a child something, you take away forever his chance of discovering it for himself. I remember sitting at the table with my daughter and she was banging her spoon on some glasses. There were several glasses there with different amounts of water, and she was tapping her spoon and making all kinds of noises, and it was kind of annoying me because it was sort of noisy and loud, and I kind of put my hand up to stop her, and she looked at me and said, "Mom, I'm just experimenting." And so she was. She was tapping the spoon at different places, different heights, on different glasses with different amounts of water, and thinking very much about what are the differences, what's causing the different sounds that I'm hearing. That is a child being what Jean Piaget referred to as a little scientist. He considered children to be active scientists or explorers of their world. Contrast this with Lev Vygotsky, whose theory you'll get to in this chapter as well. Vygotsky thinks of children very much in concert with other people. They are little apprentices. Their apprenticeship is teaching them how to be an adult. For Piaget, he wasn't thinking so much about the other people in the child's world. He was thinking about what the child himself or herself is doing to try to figure things out. This little girl is figuring out some principles of chemistry and physics as she plays with the goop in her pan. Piagetian schemes. A scheme is you can think of it as a schema, which you probably heard from general psych. It is a way of thinking about something. We have a scheme, for example, of going to class, where you walk in, you get out your books, you get out note, paper, and pen, you listen to the lecture, you take notes, you ask questions and answer questions, and then you pack up and go home. We have schemes for going to a restaurant. You walk in, you get seated, you read a menu, you order food, you eat, you pay, you leave. Children have schemes as well, and this plays a big role in Piagetian theory. In infancy, children's themes are based on actions, so they might have a banging scheme or a sucking scheme. In toddlerhood, schemes are based on functions, such as, these are things I use to eat. This is what I use to go to bed. This is what I use to play with. So functions. Older children, schemes are based on properties. So a pet is something that is alive and warm, and you can pet them, and they have a name. Maybe that's a scheme for an older child. As a child is experiencing the world, they have to make sense of the new information that they're getting. So for Piaget, he says that there are two processes, assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is fitting new experiences into existing schemes. So you're accustomed to seeing ducks, and one day you see a goose and you call it a duck, and mom says, no, that is not a duck. That's a goose. That would actually be an example of accommodation. You would have to change the scheme. Oh, a duck is something that quacks. This is a thing that honks. And so now I have to modify my scheme of duck and come up with a new scheme of goose. Assimilation, example of assimilation, baby is accustomed to sucking on a bottle, and then they're given a sippy cup, and now they fit the sippy cup into the scheme of things that I suck on in order to get something to drink. So assimilation is fitting a new experience into the existing scheme. Accommodation is when you modify the scheme as a result of new experiences. As the child is working through assimilation and accommodation, there are a few different stages that they kind of go through. At first, a child might be in equilibrium. This is a balance where all is right with the world. Your schemes are all in place. You understand everything. Everything is fine. But when new information comes in, and it causes conflict in the existing schemes, then you're in disequilibrium. Oh, here is this new sippy cup. This is a new thing to me. How am I going to make sense of this? Does this fit into a scheme I already have, or do I need to make a new scheme? Now you're in disequilibrium. Equilibration is the process by which a child reorganizes his thinking. Either he has to create a new scheme which would be accommodation, where you create a new scheme called sippy cup that is distinct from bottle, or assimilate sippy cup into things I suck on. So actually both things can occur at the same time. Assimilating sippy cup into things I suck on to drink, and creating a new scheme of sippy cup. So equilibration is the process of going through the accommodation or the assimilation until you get back to equilibrium again. Here's a couple of examples. That was a lot of terminology. Let me give you a couple of examples. Banging is a favorite scheme of children, right? That's how they explore their world. Give them anything, and they might start banging with it, especially if they're sitting in their high chair. Assimilation occurs when they incorporate new objects into the scheme. Oh, now I have a block. Let me bang that too. That makes a great sound as well. Accommodation occurs when the new object doesn't fit the existing scheme. This baby, for reasons no one can fathom, has been given a raw egg, and he tried to bang it, and oops, that didn't work very well. Now he's going to have to do some accommodation. Oh, there are things that I can't bang. This is a thing that for which banging does not work. That's accommodation. A couple of other examples. Child sees this four-legged animal for the first time, sees this Dalmatian. She already has a scheme for doggy because she has a pet, and it looks like this. It's brown, it has four legs, it has a tail that wags, it has big long ears. But now she has seen this four-legged animal, and she calls this animal doggy as well because it also has four legs and a tail that wags and long ears. Okay, so that is assimilation. So here we go back again to the child has this four-legged pet called dog, four legs, a tail, a long nose. Now she sees this animal. She tries to call it doggy because it also has four legs and a tail and a long snout. She calls it doggy and Mom says, no, no, that's not a doggy, that's a cow. Now she has to go through accommodation. Oh, doggies are not that big. Doggies don't say moo. There is a new scheme now called cow, and that is distinct from doggy. That's accommodation. Okay, let's think through so now that we understand the processes of Piaget's theory, let's think about the different stages of Piaget's theory. Sensorimotor, preoperational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Here's a nice graphic for it. Sensorimotor. This is ages 0 to 2, and this is a perfectly descriptive name for this stage. Sensory in the sense that the child is using all of their senses, touch, taste, vision, hearing, smell, in order to interact with the environment. And motor in the sense that the child really has to use their motor skills to act on the environment in order to be able to understand it. From the sensorimotor stage, we go to the preoperational stage. This is ages 2 through about 6 or 7. This is when the child begins to represent the world symbolically. Basically, what you want to understand there is that they begin to use language. That's the main thing there. The concrete operational stage is ages 7 to about 11 or 12, right before adolescence, and the child is learning all kinds of rules, such as conservation, and there are many others, that they can use to act on the environment. So a child this age can start to do some math, diagram a sentence, think about scientific principles. Formal operational stage, the adolescent can think about the future, they can transcend the situation. It no longer has to be in the here and now. In concrete operations, the child can operate on the environment, but only if it's concrete and right in front of them. In formal operations, they can think abstractly and operate abstractly. This is roughly ages 12 to adulthood. All right, let's think about the sensorimotor stage just a little bit more. Ages 0 to 2. Child is interacting with the environment, getting a feel for things, literally, with their senses. One of the big things that happens in this stage is object permanence. Object permanence is knowing that an object still exists even if you can't see it. This is not fully understood until about 18 months according to Piaget. That's why children love to play peekaboo, because it's totally surprising when you come back, because they may have literally thought that you had disappeared and no longer existed. This seems a little bit surprising, but we'll get back to this a little bit later. Some Characteristics of preoperational thinking. The world is starting to be able to be represented symbolically. In other words, they're starting to be able to use language. Couple of difficulties that a child this age has, though. Egocentrism, can't see the world from another person's perspective. Take a child this age to the store to buy a present for grandma, and they're likely to say, let's get her a Tonka truck or a Barbie doll, because they can't put themselves in grandma's shoes to see that she does not sit around playing trucks and dolls all day. Animism. They think that inanimate objects are lifelike and person-like. My brother was completely upset when my parents took him to cut down a Christmas tree, started crying because he thought that the tree had been cut off at its knees and was probably going to be upset. Centration, focusing on only one facet of a problem to the neglect of other facets. Ever take a child out for a hamburger at McDonald's and they're completely upset about the onions and pickles and mustard, and you scrape it off carefully till there's none left and they still won't have anything to do with that hamburger? That's centration. This is an example of egocentrism. This is a task that you do in the lab. Ask the girl, what does it look like from my perspective, meaning the experimenter's perspective? Conservation, knowing that volume, mass, number, length, area, or liquid quantity are the same despite superficial appearance changes. In other words, what it looks like is what it must be, according to a child this age. Here's some examples of a conservation problem. Liquid. You pour some liquid into a tall glass like this and another glass, the same exact glass, the same exact level of the water. And then you pour one of those into a shorter, fatter, wider glass, and you say, is there the same amount of water in each glass, or does one glass have more? Now you and I know, we just saw it poured, it's the same amount of glass, but a child in this stage can't conserve liquid, is focusing on appearance as reality, and says that the tall glass must have more because it's taller. There's the water line up here, and here's the water line down here, therefore this one has more. Here's another example. You have the same number of pennies. Are they the same number in each row? Child says yes. You stretch out the top one. Which one has more? This one has more. 2 sticks. Get the child to agree that they're the same length. You move one over. Which one do you think that they'll say is longer? They say this one is longer. You have 2 balls of clay. You roll one out like a sausage. They'll say that this one has more because it's longer. So that is an example of conservation and the difficulty that children in this stage have with that. Okay, that's the end of our discussion of Piaget. Go ahead and watch the videos on object permanence, and especially take a look at the video from Piaget. Remember, here's what I want you to remember about object permanence. Object permanence is the idea that an object still exists even if you can't see it. Piaget says that up to about 18 months of age, a baby has no object permanence. Watch the funny baby video, and you'll see an example of this yourself. Piaget came along and said, hey, wait, this doesn't sound right. Do they really think that mom ceases to exist when she leaves the room? That the dog is not there, does not exist anymore when he's in the backyard? She had a hard time believing it, so she performed some really incredible experiments with magical or impossible events and compared those to possible events, and she was finding that babies have object permanence at more like 3 to 4 months of age. I think you'll enjoy watching that video as well. Thanks, we'll talk to you later.